right, just want to welcome everybody to the Silver Bullet Live Show. I'm Rob. I'm joined by three other people today, and we're going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves real quick. I'm going to start off with Sherri. Go ahead.
Hi guys, Sherri, USA.
All right, then we have Dawn. Go ahead, Dawn.
Hi everyone, Dawn from the UK here.
All right, and go ahead, Michelle.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm SEO and SML specialist for Sliver Bullet Cutters.
All right, so if this is your first time to the show, welcome, of course. And if you have any questions, you'll see a little question box down there where you can go ahead and type your question. There's even a spot where you can raise your hand that will signal the panelists that are up here whether or not you have a question or not. We can try to get that answered after the show. We're going to stop the recording, of course, and turn on anyone's mic that wants to ask their question or just simply hang out. You know, this is the time and opportunity for you guys to talk with the owners and creators of the Silver Bullet machine. So it's a great way to interact with them and get your questions answered. So without further ado, we're going to be talking about, of course, the Silver Bullet along with the pen tool. And I'm going to go ahead and let Dawn talk about this pen tool.
Hi everybody. Right, as you can see from the photo there, the pen tool comes in 3 different sizes. You always use the one with the largest internal diameter directly into the clamp, and that's for your wide, thick pens. The other 2 pieces will each one fit inside that largest one. That's so that you can use smaller pens and still have them centered accurately into the center of the holder.
All right, and for our projects that we're doing tonight, we have some recommended force and velocity. You can go ahead and talk about this here too.
Okay, we're going to use mainly a Staedtler Fineliner Triplus pen. It's a soft tip, so we keep the recommended force figure at 20. If we use too high a force on that, then you do risk flattening your tip, which isn't very good for your pen. The velocity, I would suggest 200 and below because you want a decent ink flow. If you're using a Secura gel pen for other projects, then slow the speed down further to maybe 100 or even slightly less, because with those you don't want them to start skipping on the ink flow because it won't look very good on the finished project.
And Dawn, while we're on that, can I ask a question? Have you ever drawn anything with the gel pen where you went back over it and did it a second time? And if so, what were your results?
Yes, I do that quite frequently depending on the type of pen. The project that we're actually going to show, I did the green and the pink. I can't remember whether it was twice or 3 times because I wanted additional ink down. The result is perfect, as it always is when you're doing a repeat cut, because it's exactly the same process. It will be spot on. You won't know you've gone a second time other than a greater density of ink.
So if you do have that problem with the Secura gel pen, whether it's drying out or it just happens to be skipping, depending on the type of media that you're using, by going over it a second time, that fills in then, because I've not had it happen to me. I know that other people have, so I've never gone over it a second time. But have you with the Secura gel pen ever done that?
I haven't with the Secura gel pen, no.
Okay.
I tend to mainly use fiber tips.
Okay, so we'll have to test that someday and see.
Yes.
So, or in the after show, if anybody has done that, please let us know.
In this shot that you see here, you can see 3 different pen widths, each used in the holders. And with the largest one, you see there the Sharpie, and it's sitting nice and centered. Again, with the other 2 as well. This is why we have the 3 different sizes. This is the project that we're going to do. And we're going to use a water-soluble pen for the red and the green areas so that we can produce a watercolor type effect without actually having to sit down and be a decent painter.
All right, so you know, this is a short little clip that I have just to let you guys know that whenever you're using these smaller pens, you know, these were designed to fit inside each other. Okay, so otherwise, just like Dawn said, it would not fit in the Silver Bullet machine. And when watching this video here, Dawn said make sure that you always want those screws that you see right there to be facing outwards and not to the right. Correct?
That's correct. If you face them to the right and you have your carriage right over to the right side, when it tries to return to that side, it will successively keep banging against the side of the machine. So keep them to the front.
All right, so we want to show you a little prep on what you have to do in order to get this file to draw correctly. So you're going to need 3 different pens, of course, and we're going to start with the green pen. And when you put this on your Sure Cuts a Lot page here, you're going to want to make sure that you have your mat all sized up the way you want. And for this one, I chose 12 by 12. And then you'll want to either grow or shrink the project to your liking. The next thing that I did is with the flower project file selected, I went over here to the position and size, and you'll note over here the position and size. I'm going to go ahead and click this bottom right corner because I'm going to shove this entire file here to the bottom right of my mat because I want to use we call it what you see is what you get type of cutting. So this mat's 12 by 12, so you would use whatever size mat you have. So that right there positioned my flower project here exactly where I want in the bottom right hand corner. So the first marker that we use is going to be green, and this right here you'll click the eyeballs in order to isolate the green. And once you do that, you're ready to go to the cutter, the cut menu anyway, and a couple settings. You want to make sure that you do uncheck this if it is checked with the use software speed, because we want to use what's on the Sliver Bullet machine itself. We're going to use the what you see is what you get, or WYSIWYG. And then down here, I just go down here and click the custom cut preset and just choose the blade offset 0 and overcut, set that to 0. And that's very important when you're doing drawing. And maybe Dawn can explain a little why that's important.
Yes, when you're using a blade, the blade offset and overcut compensate for the fact that the tip of the blade is not in the center of the shaft. When you're using a pen or any of the other tools like the embossing tool, the engraving tool, etc., the tip is centered to the shaft, so you don't want any compensation, because if you do, the drawing will be away from the area it should be in.
Exactly. So you want to make sure that is 0, 0 for there. All right. So once you hit the cut, that's when your machine's just gonna go ahead and start drawing. And as you can see, it's right there. It's just drawing the leaves. And once it finishes with this, you're gonna have to move on to the next color. So you're gonna have to swap out that pen with the next color. The next color I chose happens to be, I'm gonna make this a purple flower here. But as you can see, fairly simple process on that. And back in Sure Cuts a Lot here, we're going to flip on the switch for the flower portion and turn off the green. And it's just the same process. You go up to the cutter, and it should save all those same settings that you had before, and you're just going to hit the cut button. And and we can see what that looks like right here. So it's just going to go over all the items that were red on the mat. It's just going to fill them in here with purple. And as long as you have that pen centered perfectly, it will draw where it should. So I'm not going to make you watch this because the next step is much cooler. So we got Dawn here. So go ahead, Dawn. You can go ahead and explain what you're doing in this video.
Okay, after we've got the finished drawing, I'm taking just a simple paintbrush, pot of water, and I'm placing water over the lines, and you can see that it immediately starts to spread the ink. You want to use a lot of water for this step, not like just rubbing at it, but actually pooling the water on there, and you'll get a much nicer effect. And you just keep going around all the colours that you want to spread. What I'll also explain on this is that the sooner you do this step after completing the drawing, the better that your ink will spread. Although the pens are water soluble, you need to get the water on within a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. And I also drew the black before I drew the red and the green for that very reason, so that the red and the green inks didn't dry out as much. And you can see that even after I've moved on to another section, the colour on the initial parts that I've done is still continuing to spread. And you just keep going over it like that. With the flowers, I kept the water inside the lines. When I get onto the outside square, you'll see that I go just straight over the line with the bush in the middle so that the colour spreads to both sides.
And we might, I'm sorry, we might add that the black is a permanent marker, which is why the water's not affecting it. Mm-hmm.
Yes, the black needs to be permanent, otherwise all of it will spread in the colour and it'll be a bit messy. But you can see how the colour's already working on those flowers. When my hand goes over it, you actually see a truer idea of what the colour's like, because I had a very bright light on while I was filming this. You can see how it's very nicely spreading out, even on the green as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you were using a watercolour, it would take you a little time to get used to doing this sort of effect. There you can see what I was saying about the outside. Just swipe the brush along, and you can also see better here the quantity of water that I'm putting on. There's a lot of water on there. Particularly
John,
up in
can
that
you talk
top
about what
corner
type of,
where you see the light catch it.
could you talk a little bit about the types of media that you...
Yes, I use a paper, well, cardstock. You want a reasonably thick cardstock because you don't want any warping of the paper afterwards. I use a lot of the time the reverse of a hammered cardstock. It's a cheap way of getting the equivalent of a watercolour paper. It gives the same effect for this. If you were to use it as watercolour paper, then repeated painting would gradually rub the surface, but because we're just using this technique where the water goes on and sits there, it works very, very well, and it's a lot cheaper than a proper watercolour paper. So something that's it can have a relatively smooth surface. What you don't want is a coated surface because it won't accept the water as well.
And for the US-based people, I'm wondering about the Copic paper, and I know Sherri Anderley has a lot to do with that. When we get done with this and open it up for discussion, we'll ask her that. But I know that there is a Copic marker cardstock type paper out there that I think would be that would work well for this as well. Because I'm not sure that we can get the same type of cardstock that you're talking about here. I wouldn't know where. Mm-hmm.
Well, you can soon do some little tests on what cardstock you've got. You don't need to draw the full file. Just draw a line without even putting it in the machine and test over that.
So, and at this point, I'd like to just mention that the files that we have tonight that we're showing, Dawn has those for sale at her site. So anybody that's wanting those can go there and purchase any of the files that she's got.
Yeah, so it's right there at the Imes graphic, and then under the plant section, and right there.
There we go.
So that's where you can find that file. So you don't have to recreate it yourself. It's right there, digital download, instant delivery.
I will just, one part I forgot to say. When we drew the file, we drew all of it in black first, including the areas that we were also going to do in red and green, because then when you add the water, you've still got a good defined line for the edges of the leaves and the flowers.
Oh, that's a good point. Yep, I was wondering about that. Beautiful job.
Thank you.
All right, we gave Michelle a challenge. Go ahead and explain this challenge that was given to you, Michelle.
Sherri issued me a challenge to create an aperture card and using the pens, and the file I used was from birdscards.com. And if you go to her site and you click on free digital files and then you click on circle frames, there you'll find the file that I used for my challenge for my card.
Yeah, so part of the challenge was you had to use the pen tool and create an aperture card. So this is what you can see the design process and see Michelle's thinking here. So
I used a blue Sharpie for this, and usually you will do the pen first, and then you're going to cut the card base. But I had already cut the card base, and then I did the pen drawing.
And where'd this file come from, Michelle?
This is birdscards.com. If you go to her site.
Yeah, she'll show it here in a minute.
Okay.
I think we have it, yeah.
Yep. We'll get to it after the pen's done drawing.
Yep. I like to watch my initial be drawn. That's a beautiful S, and by the way, that came from Dawn as well.
Yep.
She has her monograms, and they're absolutely beautiful. So you want to take a look at those. Look at you won the challenge, Michelle. You won.
I agree. It looks beautiful.
It's
Thank you.
beautiful. Great job.
And for those wondering where you can get the aperture card, that's the bird's card that Michelle was talking about.
And then again, the monograms, the monogram letters come from Dawn. And I want to just mention also, I know it doesn't have anything to do with the pens, but I've used her monogram letters numerous times doing vinyl cutting, and people go crazy. They're just absolutely beautiful. So it's worth it to go over there and take a look at those monograms, because they're, no matter what you're using them for, they're just very, very pretty. We do a lot of vinyl cutting and put them on ceramic tile, glass, etc. And these monograms are just always well received. So good job, Dawn.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so we have some important side notes whenever you're dealing with a pen tool here, and it has to deal with off-center drawing here. And so the reason why there are 3 different holders that you can combine here to make that centered cut. So you can see right here, just that screw, it's shoving that pen all the way to the corner. That pen is not centered inside that holder. So, like we said at the beginning of the video, what you have to do is you have to combine 2 of them, and now you can totally see that that is now centered. Okay, so we found a holder that fit the pen. Now, how is this important to you? Well, you can take a look here. You have a properly centered one over here on the right, and you cut a ring around the pen. Likewise, you cut that same circle out, and you expected those wavy lines to be in the center of it, and it didn't work because you didn't have a centered pen. Now, this comes into play when we're talking about the file that Dawn has, because you're using three different markers, for example, and they really need to all be centered. And if they're not, for example, on this one, this is what you can possibly get. And so circled right here, you can see how off an off-centered mark could be. So the black was obviously off on this. Likewise, right there. What else did you want to hit up on this, Sherri or Dawn, with the off-center?
That if you have a pen and it does not fit, even with the combination of the pen tools being put together, you'll want to wrap some tape around it, around the pen, and put it in so that once you've screwed that down, and you've got to screw it tight enough to be able to keep that pen from moving, but not so much that you're bearing down on the pen itself. And so you may need to wrap some tape around it, but it's critical that that pen always be centered. And then, Dawn, if you have anything to add to that?
No, exactly. You said it's critical. It's not so much a problem if all you're doing is just doing a single color without a cut, but a combination of colors, a combination of color and cut, or any of the other processes, you need to make sure they're centered.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, very, very important. All right, so this wraps this part up. We have, of course, if you're looking to get more information on this machine or any of the tools, you can always go to silverbulletcutters.com. They have a great forum on there. If you're actually looking to purchase the machines or the tools that we talked about today, there's distributor links that are up there. You have Sherri, who's the U.S., you have Dawn, who's the U.K., and then you have Joe that's in Australia. So all the locations to cover the entire world. So wherever you're at, you can get these things. Of course, there's videos over there as well at Learning Center. And if you're looking to get inspired, there's a photo gallery of all the great projects that Sliver Bullet created.
And if I could just add one thing to this, we are now doing, Penny Duncan is doing on her blog, following our classes here, she will try to follow up that following weekend with a project using the same tools that we've used, so that it's an in-depth project where she shows you from start to finish, and you can find that at Penny Duncan's blog. We'll probably add that to this because I didn't think about it before today. But now that she's going to be following us and doing that, we'll get that added here, and then or you guys can ask Penny questions in the open discussion as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you just Google Penny Duncan, it's the first link that pops up. Very, very popular person.
Yep, Penny Duncan Creations. Yep.
All right, so that wraps this up. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.